the Civic Center Advisory Committee to order October 22nd at 4 p.m. And Lisa, can we have the roll call?
Goodloya.
I expect him to come.
Joestar.
Here.
Fisher.
She's excused.
Shaw.
Here.
Lively.
Here.
Merrifield.
Here.
Tinelli.
I haven't heard one way or another. And Councilmember Dobby is excused.
Dobby and Lewis.
I'm here. We have all of our staff here. Gordon Siebert and Ed Flint and Ed Kashwagi and City Manager George Roberts and our consultants. So we'll open the floor for public comments. I don't see any members of the public here. So I'll call for approval of the minutes of October 15th. Anybody want to? Rose made a motion. Second?
Second.
Okay, Clyde, second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so we've approved. Here comes Rick, who's on his way. Regular agenda, HMC report recommendations, review of options for outreach meetings and discussion. So we'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay.
Here we go.
So we've been working a lot since we last talked to you, and really appreciated your comments. They're really good to help us focus on what to improve in each of the options. So we come back with further development of each of the three options, taking into account your comments from last week. There you go.
Put a hand down.
Thank you.
So I can just go through one at a time and walk through where they stand, and then we can do what we did last time if you'd like, and kind of go one at a time with comments. So option one, and I'll talk mostly buildings and overall concept, and then Matthew can chime in with impacts on trees and road layouts and reasoning behind some of those moves. Option one was intended to be kind of the one building option. So you see two-story building, and in this option we have parking below grade. One of the comments that was pretty common was, since both roads were dead-ending, this is also the scheme that does not have a through road. It would be important to be able to get in and out of the garage on both sides of the site. So we figured that out and added ways to ramp in, and those are two-way ramps, but just to show you where the two ramps are, top and bottom. There's also comments about kind of a there, and where's the entrance. And in this building, that sort of white spine in the middle, it, would be meant to be sort of a signature element, so that you could see that that's really the center of the building. Once you're in that lobby, you can access all of the functions. There's a main entrance off of the pedestrian area and the, kind of the garden space, and there's a main entrance if you want to go straight to the police or library, and you've convenience to park up on Station Lane. We did make sure there was some convenience parking on both sides of the site so that you don't have to go underground if you don't want to. We did show a playground down at the other end with a few parking spaces off of Maple. That was another comment. This one is keeping the courtyard in the corner. And we looked again at the intersection of Fair Oaks and Station Lane, got some input from our traffic consultant, and looked at how that would actually resolve itself. So that's kind of the overview, and then Matthew, if you want to talk about sort of how we dealt with trees and things like that.
Yeah, what we did was we kind of got down in the weeds, and I got this, I can distribute it for everybody. But it's an in-depth analysis of all the trees, and it builds upon the existing arborist report. We have a licensed arborist on staff, and she went through and looked at every single tree, and basically all the dark green trees you see in these diagrams are the heritage trees that have a good chance of surviving construction, and they're also signature trees that really create the character of the space, and we felt it was extremely important to preserve. The first thing you kind of get when you look at this is that there's a big gray spot right here, and then there's gray down in here. Part of this is where the existing buildings are, and then also the existing parking lot. So with each scheme, we really tried as hard as we could to preserve as many of the existing trees, particularly the large oaks and like the deodars right out front here. With option number one, you definitely have the park setting. As you move to the south, you have a significant number of those trees will be very happy and pleased with their new life. As Cheryl mentioned, we have a playground. You might also be wondering why we didn't provide a connection right up here, and it was just to save these trees right here. And in closer examination, we realized that those are heritage trees, but they don't have the highest value, and they might be impacted anyhow by construction. So as you'll see in other schemes, we explored the option of putting in an entry down here. I think this could be a wonderful scheme. It's definitely the best for the preservation of the trees. You can have a real park-like atmosphere. And most of these images that you see up above are actually local landscapes. Some of them are Sunset Magazine. You'll see the entry to your existing civic center. Some are from Stanford University or local community colleges. But it gives you a sense of the pastoral quality that could be in that garden space. And I'll hand out the tree preservation.
So that was,
Can I just ask a clarification for you, Uma? Which of the buildings, other than the central spine, are any of these buildings two-story?
this is all two-story. The entire, single complex there is all two-story.
Library included.
Library included. Now, the library, it's not like that whole bar is two-story, because there's only a portion of the program that, I mean, we really wouldn't put more than administrative space and support upstairs. So, you know, the building isn't all that footprint being straight up 2 stories. It's gonna have some massing variation, but it is intended that program is distributed on 2 stories.
Okay, and then the second question, what is the star down the bottom?
That is the communications tower. We threw a symbol in there to make it clear that in no scheme are we intending to move that from its present location.
And the last question, the main entrance, visitor entrance will be Ashfield?
You know, it could be either. I mean, that was the point of this scheme, of having convenience parking at both ends and having the main entrance in the middle. You know, from a pedestrian path that takes you right to that knuckle between the library and the administrative functions. There's kind of this back entrance, so to speak, if you're coming straight to the library or the police. But, you know, the idea was that all of the schemes are trying to face the park area to the south, or a central area.
Two big questions. One is, where's the multi-purpose room? Where's the big room that can be used for whatever we want?
It's within this library footprint, because that's the program it's with.
It
You
might
know,
be on the end toward the
might be
park
on
or
the end.
something.
We would try and put it, because the CC is the council chambers, we would try and put those two rooms in a prominent, easily accessed location right at the main entry. So I think, you know, that it would probably be at that end.
And the second big question is, why did you limit the parking along the rail and that whole frontage on Station Line? Why didn't you max it out there?
All the way down to the intersection? Or
Yeah,
so?
why didn't you just line the whole thing with parking on both sides?
There's no reason why we can't, but with having the underground garage, providing a lot of parking, I mean, we could.
Okay, I
It's-
just remembered that there was a strong preference for a lot of surface parking for any visitors, and this shows some visitor parking in the garage,
Yes.
which my recollection was there was pretty strong agreement that for visitors, we want to surface park. And particularly if we're gonna make this really into a park, then that's another amenity that you'd want to park, like the playground is gonna want parking. I see you have a few spaces down there, but
So I'd second that. And the reason I'd second it is because that single car length all the way down the tracks is owned by Caltrans. So why not use it for
Wanna use
parking?
it. And
It's
I
already
think we
parking. Might
can
as well keep
certainly,
It's parking,
It's parking
It's
away.
not,
But-
not all the way.
But it could go down to where the
Right.
turnaround
right,
is.
you go down where the
and
turnaround
you could
is.
come on the other side too. It could be on our side too.
It goes to
Well, you
approximately
got, maybe.
where I drew it right here.
Yeah,
Those are
exactly.
the existing
No
geometries.
reason not to do that.
Yeah, it's existing.
It's just wasted space.
Yeah, high speed, electrification is happening. I mean, we've been told it's a
It's-
done deal.
It's supposedly funded.
Yeah, so this station will open back up. This will be a real station.
So, speaking of the station, it looks like you're trying to move the station?
So actually, I think Frederick might have gotten this backwards. Did you have to move the station out of the way to get the road to come
Yeah,
straight through?
exactly. You can see right here,
It's gonna have to move to the dash line.
You're
there's a
right.
jog right here, right here where the current station exists. And so what we either do, we can maybe move it into the right of way, or we put it down here, which is
Yeah,
why.
Okay, I don't think you can move it closer to the train tracks.
Yeah,
because of the electrification,
Right.
of the width of the tracks and stuff. So if you're proposing to move it to the dashed line, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
What-
Or-
we need to move it right here, where you're seeing, where you asked us about incorporating
Yeah.
additional parking. It really needs to go right down
Right.
here.
Or beyond it.
Beyond it, exactly.
Could
That
go
would,
beyond.
Yeah.
if you
It
can
could
do
go in a
that,
park.
that would be fine.
Down closer to the turnaround.
But then you'd put parking where the station is right now.
Then that turnaround could be the drop off of the train.
Bingo.
Yeah, that'd
Yeah.
be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be
I was
smart.
thinking a lot about the kiss and ride.
Well,
Yeah.
And it centers it.
Yeah.
It gets the ridership up. It's just, it's easier. It's an easier place to, Shiloh, Sequoia Station or Atherton or Menlo Park.
Well,
Yeah.
It's easier.
you know, I think we can. Can we do that? We don't know. It has been proposed before. There's been some discussion on it. There hasn't been any research or investigation about whether or not we can actually do it.
Right.
But
It's,
you
it
can
belongs
revolt.
to us, doesn't it? The train station?
Yeah, right.
The property line jogs
People
around.
are-
So it doesn't
Yeah,
belong
so
to
it's-
us?
It's historic.
But it is a historic
Is it
building,
historic?
right? Yes, it is a historic building.
Right.
But if you do this, what you can do is a property or a lot line adjustment, basically, because you need to get into their property to straighten your road out. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly, and you say, you know what, do you mind if we move this, we'll put it right here.
Mhm.
We'll give you a piece of land that comes down, or an easement, whatever, and bring the train station right here, keep this as parking, and you clean up this geometry right there.
Which is sort of one option to
Yeah.
folks about that.
So,
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
yeah, can we hear from staff, any opinions, input about this scheme? Mark, you want to?
Well, I mean, I think just flipping through all three, I think what the architects are trying to achieve is three distinctly different, generate feedback and comments.
What are your thoughts on the circulation of this one?
From circulation, to me, this is the least desirable because it creates a total dead end for every single street. And which means that people who currently live on Maple and Ashfield, they're gonna wanna know, how the heck can they turn left onto Alchemy? Because currently, they can go over to Fair Oaks and go to the signal to turn left on Alchemy. And this creates a more secure way of doing that.
Yeah.
For sure.
The other comment I would add is the underground parking, is that, can you enter in one side and go out the
Yes.
other, or vice
You
versa?
can,
Yeah.
yes.
So will that create motorists using that as a cut-through?
It could, I don't know that motorists would find it all that desirable as a cut through, but yes, it's certainly possible that that could happen.
Because it's a straight across.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we're imagining. It may not, it doesn't have to be. You could force a circulation around parking spaces and it's not a straight through. There's a lot of ways you can ultimately lay out the parking garage, but it would certainly invite that opportunity. Whether they would use it that way or not, it's hard to say.
Would you want to make it secured parking just for police and staff? So the
That
public
is
couldn't cut
one,
through?
that's one thing we discussed last time. Right now, because it is underground and we can essentially make the footprint what we need it to be, it could be as big or as small as ends up being practical, if this is the scheme chosen.
I could just see that GPS, if there was a traffic jam on Fairhook or somewhere, that directs you into there,
Yeah, right.
through the underground garage, out the other side. So anyway, just a thought.
Well, from just the overall look of it, and gosh, it gets rid of so much of that asphalt that's out there. And you've got so much more green, it looks like a park, it looks really, it really, has that appeal
Yeah.
to it. I'm having a little bit of a problem with the ingress and egress of, the Ashfield and, the underground, and that, I still don't see a there. I don't see like a focus point on this scheme as a place that you drive to and go, oh yeah, there's the city hall. You would have to park or go down below. And, it really does focus you to go down below. And for the most part, I
Right.
don't think people will really want to.
And I think this was, trying to combine an idea of a single building, because that would be the most compact footprint, with the idea that one of the groups had of maximize the park area, don't have through circulation. I think that there are a lot of problems with that whole notion, as we've all been talking about. But some of the good things are, and one of the problems it does create is this building wants to almost have four-sided orientation. Because of the way this scheme resolves, you want to, respond to the park, you want to respond to the convenience parking, and you want to respond to Fair Oaks. So it does make it very difficult in this scheme, the way it's shown, kind of trying to be all things to all ideas. So I think if this were a general direction that people headed, and they said, I really like a single building, and I really like maximizing park, I think what we would do is start to take another look at how the roads really need to work for circulation, which way the building really wants to be oriented, and choose an orientation that responds to the best approach and the parking that is provided. So if there be refinements that this scheme would beg for if chosen. Because I think there are several things trying to happen at once that are not all successful.
The other thing is that you've gotten rid of the council building.
Yep, and this was, we wanted to test that somewhere.
Is it
There's
I
no
got-
reason why the building cannot stay in this scheme as a, historic element that might be for, the historic collection, that, this scheme can certainly keep it and provide a gesture to it as an element of the park. So, it's something we could dash in this scheme, just to acknowledge that it's not required to be removed, but it does not have a civic center program function in it.
I think it's a very credible offer. I think that the goal is to create really different plans that people respond to both negatively and positively, and I think this is a very credible offer.
My question on this one is, we just answered the question about the council chambers, but if this were to be built in this way, obviously the library could exist during building time,
Yes,
and the building department permit center could exist
Yes,
over there for a
and-
time. What about the administrative buildings?
you probably could take out the administrative side and have to find space for them. You could probably keep the police half going, you could probably preserve some swing space in use where the police and administrative building is now. You'd start to eat into, I think you
could
would
phase it.
start, you could phase it,
You could build the library last,
yes.
and then you could phase in, you
Yep.
could leave the administrative building
Yep.
up.
This one probably gives you the best phasing and swing space option using existing space on site.
If you look at the tree survey, you can definitely see how that could be accomplished.
Yep.
Police are down here, you can still give them parking, you can keep
Yep.
Asheville open, you just need to demo probably the admin building to get your garage in. We also looked at, probably unbeknownst to Cheryl, but orienting the garage this way. Down, because we've got this long leg right here. But the constraints we hit were the property boundaries,
Yes.
getting the driveways, the ramps down in there. It started to really divide up the open space. And then we also ran up against the heritage trees right here. Got this big oak out here, which we didn't.
Okay.
Anyone else?
George-
Anything else on option
George
one?
wants to-
And yeah, one of the things I liked about option one was it creates that large expanse of park area. And presently, right now, we really don't have an outdoor venue for civic events that take place at Town Hall. There's nowhere to go, but this opportunity would provide that sort of opportunity.
I mean, that's a kind of thing that you may want to keep the council chambers and, make it kind of a multi-use sort of park function kind of thing.
Park pavilion.
Do your minimal renovations to it, so that you've still got some bathrooms and you've got a meeting space or an event space where someone can set up. So, that might argue that if this scheme started to be the winner, those would be some variations that we could explore as we refined it, for example. Okay, any other comments on option one?
Yeah, it's a pretty big room if you take out the diamond.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, if
No,
you
it's
took
good
all
size,
this
yeah.
stuff-
You can blow the walls a little bit.
Yeah, this is a nice room, if you didn't have all this built-in stuff to deal with, and it was freshened up.
Get rid of it.
I wanted to ask Mike, do you think it's necessary to have ingress and egress from all three streets, Fair Oaks, Ashfield and Maple? Just kind of curious on your opinion on that.
I guess I think it should have.
Okay, so, because I know we talked about last week about putting that turnaround a little bit more in front of what would be kind of the U of these buildings here. So if you had, and I'm not talking about Maple, I'm not including Maple here, but if you just had Asheville come all the way down to Station Lane, made the turnaround, maybe at the face of this U, you'd be creating more of a center of what Elizabeth is talking about.
I think the options 2 and 3 probably sort of fit this.
Okay.
On this topic, we have speculated a lot about how would the neighbors feel.
We'll be testing that.
Because there are two different things. How do people who try to cut through the neighborhood
Yeah.
feel?
Yeah.
What the neighbors don't care about.
Right.
And we probably shouldn't either, frankly.
Mhm.
And then two is how do the neighbors feel? And I don't know that we have surveyed the neighbors. So I
Right.
would hope at that neighborhood outreach meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we do a formal survey, but at least an informal
If
survey.
we surveyed them about what specific.
If you shut down, if Ashfield ended right here, would the people who live on Ashfield think that's a positive or negative?
Right,
They might think it's great.
sure,
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
might say, God, that's wonderful. So
cuts down on the traffic.
Yeah, people try to cut through to avoid that stoplight.
I would say I'm all for it.
I've surveyed them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I've
just
talked to
walking.
everybody who lives on the street.
Right, yeah.
Good.
And
And
they don't consider it a positive, I
No.
guarantee
They
you.
What, closing it off?
Oh,
They
totally.
like cut through.
They don't care whether the road moves, but they don't like, they don't wanna be a cul-de-sac.
They don't wanna be a
because-
cul-de-sac.
Because exactly what
The reason
somebody,
they're saying that's it.
somebody said, that if they wanna go left on
Mm-hmm.
El Camino, they're
Sorry.
trapped.
But they can't just pull out, turn right and take a U-turn at Appleton Ave.
that's even dangerous, you know,
Well,
cutting across.
They
Because
can.
it's still one stoplight.
No, but what she's saying is, it's not easy to cut
All
across
the way
traffic to go
across.
left on
Yeah.
Atherton Ave.
Yeah.
Mhm. Or Isabella.
So the
Especially
neighbors are
mornings and
opposed to
afternoons.
closing Asheville from your,
What's, I'm sorry, Matt?
the
what was that?
neighbors are opposed to closing
Yes.
Asheville. Because the
Yeah.
traffic
Pretty
engineer
much.
But it
said,
would be good to confirm that at the neighborhood
But-
outreach meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the people on Maple, same thing, like,
I think it's a credible thing. I think we should get those comments. I really do. I think it's a good thing.
Okay, anything else on option 1?
I just wanted to say that I think the way you've drawing this now, as sort of a sketch is
Oh, yeah,
a great
yeah.
improvement. I
Yeah, no,
really-
this is always our
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
yeah.
great.
Okay, Chief?
The entrance off of Ashfield, I don't know if that parking lot is to scale or that's the actual number of parking spaces. But, you know, one of the issues that could occur is that people come into Ashfield and the position, you know, all the parking spaces are filled by not having that through area that
Right.
the mayor was referring to, then they've got to go all the way back out.
Right, and that's what we
around the
discussed
company.
last time, so that's why we made sure you can get to and through the garage.
Let's see, it goes
added
down to the,
second ramp.
down
Yeah.
the down ramp.
Yeah, that was one of the comments last week that we thought was, yeah, that's a really good comment. If you're gonna dead end them, you can't force them all the way back out to El Camino, so.
And you know, I still think that underground parking is probably an okay idea for staff and police, but to expect residents and visitors to go, I mean, we're not like Palo Alto where, you know, you have to, in order to get to the plaza, you have to go down.
you always look for the street parking first. You always
Yeah.
circle the block. and
Well,
then you go down.
the
Yeah.
reason Palo Alto built their building the way they did was in the 70s when there were riots going on and they wanted to, you know, make it so that they could secure it
Yeah,
and nobody could get to them. That's true.
yeah.
Well, I think
You
in
weren't
terms.
born yet,
No, no,
but,
no.
I was there, so.
I think in preparation for next week, what we will do is get the station in the right place that will work, that we just discussed, moving it down near the cul-de-sac, and add more surface parking along Station Lane, so that those two things are picked up for the outreach meetings.
Okay.
And we'll look at the parking garage, and it will focus on providing police and staff parking and meeting that program count with a few, whatever fills out the footprint of, you know, additional potential visitor spaces.
And you could, well, you can decide if, are you gonna dot in this building or?
And I
leave it
was
out?
going to dot it in.
I dotted in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
it's
dotted in.
optional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
One point on that underground parking, something we haven't really taken into account as you did analysis of uses, is we have an entire second floor of the carriage house that is floor to ceiling storage of boxes and found files
Yeah.
and things like that. So if there is space opportunity in an underground parking facility here
Right.
to move all that stuff, we just opened up a venue at the
That's
Carriage
a good,
House.
that's a
for
really
the
good
public.
point. That's a really good point.
The part of this one that I struggle with, is the library is right by the train. So we haven't shielded it, and you put staff away from the train, the library toward the train, I'm struggling with that, and while I think the park is beautiful, on this plan, we haven't really taken advantage of it, like, nothing's in it, like the
Right.
library, I know you're gonna go to other ones with the library and the park, but even on this plan where it's a cohesive big site,
Yeah, we
with no
actually,
cross-cutting, you could still.
yeah, we actually had a sub option for this one that would take the library out of this complex and move it all the way down, kind of where you're seeing the playground, down to the other
Mhm.
end, and have more parking right off of Maple to access the library. So we did have a sub option that we were gonna bring as an overlay that would do that. I think your point is actually good, though. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, at the very least, even in this scheme, I'm wondering that the administrative side shouldn't be flipped with the library. I think that that's going to be better in a lot of ways.
Agreed.
So I
for
think
next
we will
week,
make
just
that
flip
change for
those?
next week, because we'll
Good
flip
call,
those
Steve.
two.
So that
elements.
Asheville would become you'd think
Yeah.
library, and
You would come in
station wagon, you
Asheville.
would think city.
I think that's a
Exactly,
really good one.
exactly. I think that's a great comment, I think you're absolutely right, because that's what was bothering me about the adjacency of the police and the library off of Station Lane was bothering me, because I agree, something didn't feel right, thank you.
That's a really good one.
And one other, we were spending a lot of time with massaging the placement of the buildings and the parking. And the next iteration is gonna flush out the
Yeah.
landscape a
Yeah.
lot more.
Yeah,
A lot more, we were talking about there's no there, and I agree with you, there needs to be some kind of central gathering space here, and the graphic needs to convey that.
yeah.
And if you move that library out there
Yeah.
to Maple,
Yeah,
the density's gonna go way down.
Yeah.
right.
You
right.
could do one-story project.
Oh, absolutely,
You could do what Jim was asking for, this would become one story over here, or
Mhm.
largely one with some two-story elements. in it.
Well, let's look at the other.
Well, it
Yeah.
is right now.
Have you-
I mean, it's largely one
Yeah.
with some two-story element in this proposal,
the
right?
single building element is mostly all two-story, there's
No,
probably.
for the library, I was referring.
The library we've assumed a small, like admin and support being upstairs.
But it's gonna feel like a big two-story mass.
The
It's
whole
gonna feel
mass
like
is
a
gonna feel like a
supermansion,
two-story,
like a big
exactly.
giant house.
Yeah, and that was the idea
And it
of
could come
this.
down to ranch style, there's
could,
libraries way
if
over
you
there
did
in the
that.
park, and, yeah.
But in a way, we explored more of that in the other options.
But you
Um,
might do that in terms of an overlay for these outreach meetings.
Yeah, we are gonna
Look
probably
at
do an
this.
overlay that moves the library way down,
Do you
puts
like
everything
that?
else as
Yeah.
one building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so option two, this is the option where all buildings are one story above ground. It is an option that saves this building and puts it to use as part of the library program with some kind of connector between or some such thing like that. It creates a cul-de-sac on Ashfield, but offers some opportunity for parking right off that cul-de-sac. And it provides a pedestrian town center, so all the buildings and their main entrances, there are two. There's one to the library on one side, and there's one to the police and administration complex on the other side. They are all coming off a strictly pedestrian central zone. Station Lane goes all the way through, and it's got parking all the way along. We moved the station to be that focal point at the end of that central gathering space. We have shown the possibility of dashing Ashfield all the way through, but Matthew will talk about some concerns our traffic engineer had about that. Police secure parking is directly off of Fair Oaks Lane and has its own little driveway ingress off of Fair Oaks Lane and is secured behind the police facility.
So this is no underground parking.
No underground parking, everything's on the surface.
So that could go away if we went underground.
Oh, yeah, you could reduce a lot of that surface parking as much as you want, if you captured more underground and you put the police underground. This one also is showing the courtyard absent and saying that maybe that moves somewhere else in the city. Just to, again, get a reaction to that, but you could easily keep it, back in that corner near where it is now. This scheme doesn't preclude that. So those are the highlights of this scheme. So Matthew, you wanna talk about the roads a little bit more in this scheme?
Yeah, so in conversation with the traffic engineer, he said, it's really critical to provide, it's very important to provide Station Lane as being open.
As being what?
As providing that, making sure that Station Lane that you can drive through. You
Okay.
could close it, but what the effect is exactly what you were already describing, that you start to load traffic back onto El Camino.
Well, and at the crossing,
Mhm.
at the railroad crossing too.
Yeah,
Right, yeah,
exactly.
that becomes very busy.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I talked with him extensively about. You'll see it on, I think we got on another scheme. But we explored, originally I explored putting in kind of a traffic island right there. It's just really tight and the geometry comes out to be pretty odd. Then we had another scheme where we had just a big sweep across down through here. And he said that was okay, but he's still concerned about sight distances. And he felt that anything we could do in this intersection to clean it up, to square it up, to rationalize it was desirable. So you'll see that pretty much on each one of these schemes. The other thing he spoke a lot about was aligning whatever secondary entry we place on Fair Oaks with this street right here. I think this is Fair Oaks Lane too.
Wait, this street is the cul-de-sac?
Yeah,
That's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
if we provide a secondary access off of Fair Oaks, it needs to align with this intersection.
Right.
Mhm.
But right now, do you have access there? I can't tell. It looks like.
Yes, you
It's
do.
attached.
That's how the police get in, and the police have secure parking. They have access onto Fair Oaks. It's all for themselves.
I see.
And what we dashed in there is an EVA. And that's because the fire department might want to get onto the backside of your building. It's also, you could put a potential connection through there. As we've drawn it, it's pretty circuitous. The dark green represents a heritage tree that we're trying to preserve. And then in terms of circulation, as you move down Station Lane, the choices are, do you drop Station Lane back down to its original alignment? And that way you avoid all the trees, all the heritage trees, or do you run it along the railroad tracks and you get close to these big heritage trees that are out in the courtyard? And part of the argument you can use for this is that those trees are already heavily impacted and they're surviving. And we're potentially opening up more pavement underneath them, which is great. Trees breathe, they need to have open soil to breathe to survive. And then once again, this really gives you a great opportunity to have that central gathering space. The geometry reinforces, the building geometry reinforces the space on either side, gives you a sense of enclosure. Once again, I was looking at images, and I was thinking of, for those of you up to Healdsburg, they have a fantastic town square. And this could be very much in that character. It's a nice pedestrian scale, very intimate, charming. And then once again, we showed the gateways. There's an opportunity at each end along Station Lane to do those gateways.
Could you just expand on that, this little dotted portion
Yeah.
around here?
That's a potential connection. We showed it there just as like an EVA, so that's an emergency vehicle access. So that if you wanted to get around, the fire department wanted to get around there, they can get around the back of the building. Sometimes they require that. You probably know more about fire code than I do, but they want to be able, it gets into pole lengths of the hoses, how close the fire hydrant is.
I mean, this plan has pretty good access. They might not insist on something like that, but we wanted to make sure we have that option for that connector. Now, did the traffic engineer, did he feel like if we had these two and it was a through street, it would create a problem? Or was he?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay, good.
So if you were willing to sacrifice that heritage tree, you just have to
Straighten it out.
You can straighten it
Which
out.
one, which one?
This is
The
dark.
one
Yeah,
that
that
sits in the parking lot out
Uh-huh.
there, in the back.
What happens is when you bring in Ashfield, you're abandoning this little piece of property right here,
Yeah,
and we can turn it into parking. But the comment was made that people don't want to have to walk across the road to the parking lot.
no.
So every time, that's why we didn't do it on this scheme.
Mhm. Did I hear you say that the consultant said that the only two options for ingress to this property is either the kind of reconfiguring the station lane a little bit and straightening it out, or directly across from the other,
That's their preferred.
but not, you couldn't kind of split the middle and make a grand entrance this way and with the building there, or there, you know,
I have that sketch back at my desk.
you do.
By the way,
But they-
one little thing, that when you talk to traffic engineer, that across the street over there, this is a giant hedge
Yeah,
that has gotten really thick, and I don't know if it's in probably right away or not, but
it is.
a big trimming job would make that intersection safer today, because you can't see around that hedge when you come through here, you can't see who's coming. Or just one of those, Atherton doesn't seem to
No.
police this.
Has anybody
I've
noticed
seen
that?
so many
or-
neighbors put hedges on corners and
We-
where you can't see around them, that's
Oh,
one of
We
them.
do get,
Go ahead.
occasionally, we get that input at the transportation committee.
Uh-huh.
We haven't at that particular location, and whenever we've asked property owners to enhance safety by trimming, they've always been cooperative.
All right, that's enough.
You're
Wait,
joking.
I can
No,
ask
not
them
at all.
again,
Oh, okay.
But
No,
their
no,
preference
you're
is
joking.
it's not to have intersections offset.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, the volume of traffic that you've got coming off of here is so low, I
Right.
can't imagine why that's a problem.
Right, right.
I mean, how many?
It's
people-
probably textbook theory that, you know, in
Right.
general practice.
Right, you don't do it?
Right.
Yeah,
Rick?
So, I think in the interest of having really different alternatives, which I think is important, that you should make this road go through, either with or without that heritage tree. I think you should test that issue.
Okay,
I think it's a mistake to have two cul-de-sacs.
Me too.
Yeah.
okay.
I question whether the playground should be in the middle versus up in the upper corner where you've got it. And I guess I would feel better, and maybe this is a later when we get into more design issue time, but I would feel better with the police station being 2 stories unless there's a reason that they would prefer it not to be, because I think it will block the noise better. And I think it's in the right spot. I'm not crazy about the council chambers being where it is rather than where the, you know, the other civic functions are. Seems odd to me to have it connected to the police.
It's not really connected. The idea is that where that entrance is, there's again a lobby that you can go in 3 different directions. You can go straight to the council chambers.
So maybe it creates more of a lobby by having it
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah, that was the idea.
I like the walking